Sales Crunch. Learn more, earn more.
Great. So we're here at the First Round CEO Summit with Steve Blank. Steve, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And sitting with us. So tell us a little bit about you first.
Not much. 20 years as a serial entrepreneur, 8 startups, 4 IPOs, and 1 go home and stay home IPO during the internet bubble.
And the last one of which was Epiphany, was that the last one?
Which was an enterprise software company.
Right.
And so in my career in the last 10 years, it's been as an academic. I teach entrepreneurship at Stanford in the engineering school and at Berkeley and Columbia in the business school.
Yeah, and you've written a book called 4 Steps to the Epiphany,
right,
which is, in my opinion, disguised as a product development book, but it's really a sales book. But everyone calls you the father of customer development. So can you describe what customer development is?
Sure, and I have to tell you, the description I give you now, 10 years after I wrote it, is very different than the one I would have given you at the time. Customer development was just basically, when I first wrote it, me extracting a set of heuristics about what sales and marketing was like inside a startup and what the unwritten rules were for success. 10 years later, I'll observe what I actually had done and now actually think about is understand that the rules for a startup are radically different than a large company. And what I think I can now articulate is pretty simple. Large companies execute an existing, known and tested business model. Executives are hired, VPs of sales, VPs of marketing, etc. And you know who the customer is. You know who the competition is. You know what business you're executing. And therefore, you're a great executor. Especially a salesperson. There's the price list, there's the data sheet, you kind of can follow the past plan, you come in with a Rolodex, etc., you make the top 1% bump. What we've never been able to articulate is, well, how's the startup different? Aren't they just smaller versions of large companies? And I think what we can now clearly say is no. Startups are a temporary organization designed to search for a scalable and repeatable business model. And the operative word is search, where the operative word in a large company is execute. That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Customer development, therefore, is the process on how one searches for a business model with a whole set of unknowns in a startup.
Yeah.
That's what the customer development process is.
And so you describe in your book this thing that's called the death spiral, when customer development isn't done properly, and it's
not done at all.
Or not done at all, and it's very much an interaction between product marketing, the CEO, and the board. Can you talk a little bit about the death spiral?
Sure. The death spiral to any sales VP will, you've either been through it once in your career, or at least you've got friends who have, and it works like this. You're in a startup, and the product gets announced, and the VP of marketing assumed they did their stuff, and you had a great party, and you get press, and like maybe even got a ton of leads. And you have your first board meeting, and the board says, "How we doing?" And the head of marketing says, "Great, they got all this demand going into the channel." And the VP of sales is happy and says, "Hey, yeah, pipeline." And okay, great. Next board meeting, how we doing? There's a revenue plan. Pipeline.
Yeah.
Well, how the number pipeline? Next board meeting. You repeat. After about 4 of these, all of a sudden, the board, the minute you start to say the word pipeline, is looking at you like, you better not say that again.
Yeah.
Next board meeting, you're the VP of sales, and you realize no one is sitting next to you in the boardroom. And you realize that it's the end of the world. I mean, you're over. Next board meeting, your replacement is there. And what does your replacement do? Well, if they're halfway intelligent, they'll take a look at whatever strategy you did and say, well, that was screwed. I'm going to come up with a new strategy.
Yeah.
Right? Repeat. 6 months later, still a problem? Guess what? Who's next? VP of marketing. Can't be the VP of sales. It's a problem. We just hired her.
Right.
VP of marketing goes. And if you got enough cash and it's still not working, you maybe replace the CEO. What's really going on here, is that you're searching for a business model, but you're doing it by crisis, right? So in a startup, what we never embraced before, because startups are kind of new we've only been doing this for 40 years, is we never articulated that the search for a business model, we can't just put out an Excel spreadsheet and say, execute to the plan. You go, what are you talking about? We're inventing an industry. What plan? Well, I made up the numbers. That's what we sold the board. Make those numbers. Well, wait a minute, we don't even know who the customers are, but you hire a VP of sales who did great at execution, you throw them in that role, and you assume that they have to make a number instead of actually searching for who's the customer, what's the right product features, what's the right pricing model, etc. That all these are actually unknowns that require incremental and iterative search. And the way we tend to search within Death Spiral is by firing executives. Yeah. And the customer development process allows us to replace that Death Spiral and fire by crisis with just building in this notion of search as a natural part of what a startup is about.
My experience from my perspective as a former VP of sales is that a big part of the breakdown is everyone wants to blame the sales person or the marketing person, and more often than not, product is building the product that they think is amazing, product engineering, and they won't listen to the salespeople who are actually trying to convey the customer's sentiment.
And I think you've nailed it. And so I got down to why startups fail, just two reasons. One is the founder confuses their passion on day one with I know what the customer needs. And that immediately gets translated into, well, if I know what the customer needs, I don't need to get out of the building and talk to them. In fact, all I need to do, because typically I'm an engineer if I'm a Silicon Valley startup, I just need to build the entire product. And so they go into what's called a waterfall development process, where they spec everything on day one. You know, we'll spit it out 9 months or 2 years later. Thank you very much. Now you go sell it. Well, it turns out there's no way you could have guessed every possible feature. So the right model now is you pair customer development with an engineering process called agile development, which instead of saying, look, we're going to build the entire thing, actually is a unique way to engineer a product. It says, no, we're going to build the product incrementally and iteratively, and we're trying to find the minimum feature set or minimum viable product that customers will raise their hand and say, gotta have that. Yeah. And the idea is you just assume you're not going to get it right at the first time. Yeah. Now the second piece to what you just said is pretty heretical. Let me offer it as the bigger problem for a VP of sales is taking a VP of sales title at a startup. I offer a radical solution which says you should all be part, at first, of a customer development team. VP of sales implies there's a set of numbers you better make or you're fired. Head of customer development implies to both the CEO and the board that, no, we have an opinion of the numbers we should make, but we still aren't sure about who are the customers, what products should we be offering, etc. And actually, if you take that title, it says, hey, my job is not to actually bring in every possible dollar. It's to understand what business we're in. And that's a more fundamental issue. And that's hard for companies, but more and more are doing that.
Sales Crunch. Learn more, earn more.